Trump dropped a real bombshell during the UN. What he said needs to be heard by the whole world. In September 2025, a historic vote took place. More than 140 countries took a position within the United Nations General Assembly. The central question was, to side with Israel or favor Palestine? The overwhelming majority decided to recognize Palestine as a state. And it was in this context that Trump issued a warning that surprised everyone. 5 key points about Israel, and this episode caught everyone's attention. First discovery. On September 12, 2025, the vote on the so-called New York Declaration took place. The result was clear. 142 votes in favor, only 10 against, and 12 abstentions. This resolution called for a ceasefire in Gaza, approved the two-state solution, and paved the way for Palestine to be recognized as an independent state. France and Saudi Arabia introduced the proposal. Israel and the United States opposed it, while the rest of the world celebrated. A few days later, on September 23, 2025, during the 81st session of the UN General Assembly, Donald Trump delivered a harsh speech. He strongly criticized the wave of international support for the recognition of Palestine, citing countries such as France, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, Portugal, Belgium, and others that had officially supported the Palestinian cause. And it didn't stop there. On September 19th, there was a new vote, this time to decide whether Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas could address the assembly virtually, as the US had denied visas to his delegation. Once again, the majority sided with Palestine. 145 votes in favor and only 5 against, including the United States, Israel, and a few allies. This sequence raised the question, if the entire world seems to be on Palestine's side, why do Israel and the United States remain virtually isolated? And even more importantly, what does biblical prophecy have to say about this isolation? Second discovery, Trump's solution. After Palestine's victory in the vote, Trump issued a warning. Peace without justice is not true peace. He declared that the United States had never been an obstacle to a deal involving Israel, presenting America as a steadfast ally committed to brokering peace in accordance with Israeli interests. This speech raised alarm bells among prophecy scholars. Trump's delivery echoed his presentation of the Abraham Accords years earlier. He advocated peace through treaties, negotiations, and mutual recognition. To the world, it all seemed sensible. But for those who follow biblical prophecy, there was something unsettling. To understand this, we need to go back to 2020, when Trump and Netanyahu reached an agreement that stunned the world. On September 15th of that year, the Abraham Accords were signed. More than just a peace treaty, this movement changed the international landscape. Trump even called this moment the dawn of a new Middle East after decades of Arab-Israeli conflict. These agreements were named after Abraham, considered the father of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, symbolizing the attempt to unite religions and peoples in one of the most divided regions on earth. However, it was not unanimous. The Palestinians felt betrayed, claiming that this further distanced them from the possibility of having their own state. Iran reacted furiously, and Israel's enemies were on alert, as some Arab nations chose to prioritize stability and economic prosperity over war. Fast forward to 2025, now back in office, and Trump sought to expand these agreements even further. Alongside Netanyahu, he began building a broader alliance, rallying countries around Israel. At first glance, it seemed like a legitimate effort for peace. But for many Bible-conscious Christians, there was a nagging premonition. Scripture speaks of a similar agreement, one that appears good but conceals great danger. This agreement is known as a deceptive treaty. The main reference is in Daniel 9:27. He will make a firm covenant with many for 1 week. In the middle of the week, he will cause sacrifice and offering to cease. On the wing of abominations he will make desolate, until the destruction that is determined is poured out on him. This verse reveals the existence of a 7-year treaty between a powerful leader and several nations, with Israel as the center of attention. But halfway through this period, the covenant is broken, ushering in what the Bible calls the abomination of desolation. It is precisely this agreement that many interpreters of prophecy call the treacherous treaty, the one that will begin the 7-year period of tribulation. This is not to say that the covenant mentioned is exactly the same as the one described by the prophet Daniel. However, Daniel was not the only one to issue this warning. In 2 Thessalonians 2:3, it is written, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God." This is where the question becomes even more intriguing, and at the same time troubling. Many Christians have been looking at the Abraham Accords and seeing curious parallels: the focus on Israel, present, the participation of several nations, also, the promise of peace in one of the most dangerous regions in the world. Yes. Now in 2025, Trump adds even more pieces to the board: Syria, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon. The coalition grows. Let's be honest. When you hear a prophecy that speaks of an agreement, followed by betrayal and the revelation of an antichrist, it's natural to feel uneasy. Could this be happening now? Or is it just an exaggeration? Either way, the question remains, what if the Bible is precisely warning us of times like these? Could Trump and Netanyahu be setting the stage? The similarities are too great to ignore. This is where what scholars call the prophetic covenant checklist comes in. Let's look at the criteria outlined in Daniel. Criterion 1, confirm an alliance. The Hebrew term used is gabar, which means to strengthen, to reinforce something already existing. It's not about creating something new, but about strengthening what's already established. The Abraham Accords, signed in 2020, are now being expanded and reinforced in 2025. Criterion 2, with many. The initial agreements involved Israel, the United States, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. This already included several nations. Now Trump's plan includes Syria, Saudi Arabia, and Lebanon, further expanding its scope. Criterion 3. For 1 week. In prophetic terms, a week represents 7 years. The Abraham Accords didn't mention a time frame, but Trump's goal for expansion extends to 2028, exactly 7 years from 2021. Criterion 4. Centrality in Israel. Daniel speaks of an agreement centered around Israel, which was later broken by the desecration of the temple. Similarly, the Abraham Accords aim to normalize relations with Israel. And there's a key word in the prophecy that changes the entire interpretation: confirm. Daniel doesn't say create, draft, or negotiate. He says, confirm a covenant with many. This has enormous implications. The question isn't whether there will be a treaty, but when someone will emerge to confirm what already exists, and that person may be much closer than we imagine. Are you paying attention? Are you prepared? Because if this is what Daniel was talking about, the prophetic clock isn't just ticking, it's about to stop. There's one detail that should alert any believer. The Bible doesn't warn us about wars in the end times, but about peace. A deceptive peace, a peace that deceives the world, causing everyone to let their guard down just before judgment falls. Trump and Netanyahu don't just talk about ending conflicts. They talk about transforming the entire Middle East into a paradise. But what if this paradise is precisely the setting of the biblical warning? See what Scripture says about this. 1 Thessalonians 5:3. When they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them, as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. Daniel 8:25. And by his craftiness he shall cause deceit to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace he shall destroy many, and he shall stand up against the prince of princes, and he shall be broken without hands. Note this phrase, by peace he will destroy many. The Antichrist does not come to power through war, but through peace. He solves problems, brings prosperity, and creates a sense of well-being, until the moment everything turns to ruin. At the July 7th meeting, Netanyahu told Trump, "Your vision is brilliant. You're not just promoting peace, you're making the desert bloom." Trump responded, "We will make this region so prosperous and secure that the world will call it a miracle." A miracle. The same word the Bible often uses to describe the Antichrist's deceptive signs. And in Revelation 13:13-14, we read about these false miracles that deceive multitudes. And he performs great signs and wonders, even making fire come down from heaven in front of men's eyes, deceiving those who dwell on the earth through the miracles he has power to perform in front of the beast. But here's the truly frightening point. This peace is working. The Abraham Accords have already transformed relationships that seemed impossible to restore. Former enemies are becoming allies. Trade is growing, tourism is booming, technology is being shared. Everything feels like prosperity. However, according to prophecy, 6 significant events will occur when the Antichrist establishes the covenant pact. First, the 7-year countdown begins. This is the most striking detail. When the Antichrist confirms the covenant, it doesn't make headlines, cause stock market crashes, or spark immediate diplomatic reactions. However, spiritually, it is the most significant event as it begins the prophetic countdown to Christ's return. From the moment the covenant is made, God's clock begins to mark, with absolute precision, each event of the following 7 years. The desecration of the temple, the great persecution, the outpouring of divine wrath upon the earth, and finally, the return of Jesus Christ. Each event is already determined, set to happen at the exact time. And this brings a disturbing truth. This countdown cannot be stopped, nor postponed, nor negotiated. When the Antichrist confirms the covenant, the gears of prophecy begin to turn relentlessly, fulfilling a plan established even before the foundation of the world. Second, Israel's false sense of security becomes its greatest vulnerability. This isn't just a political treaty, but a psychological one. For the first time in its modern history, Israel will experience something it has always been denied: total security. For the first 3.5 years of this period, its borders will be protected, its enemies at bay. They will be able to build without fear, prosper without worry. But this confidence will be their trap. The same leader who appears to protect them will become their most cruel enemy. The agreement that seemed to guarantee their survival will be the key to their persecution. And the Bible has already foretold this. In Matthew 24:21, Jesus declared, "For then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be." This will be the moment when false security will be shattered by the greatest betrayal in history. Third, the rebuilding of the temple will be accelerated. This will be the great sign. The covenant will not only permit, but actively support the rebuilding of the Jewish temple, a dream the people of Israel have cherished for nearly 2,000 years. But the temple will not be just a religious site. It will become the stage for humanity's greatest deception. Since 70 AD, the temple has been destroyed and never rebuilt. When it does, it will be under the legal and international protection guaranteed by the agreement. And for the first time in centuries, the Jews will have global political support to rebuild the temple on the Temple Mount, the most contested place on earth. Suddenly, that small piece of property in the world will become the most protected construction site on earth. But rebuilding the temple doesn't just mean fulfilling Jewish religious aspirations. It's about erecting the physical site where the Antichrist will commit the ultimate blasphemy that Jesus himself warned against. Christ said in Matthew 24:15, "Therefore when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, let the reader understand." The holy place is the temple. The Antichrist needs its reconstruction, for it is there that he intends to declare himself God. One cannot desecrate a temple that does not exist, nor demand worship in a sacred place that has not yet been built. Therefore, the covenant will include specific clauses for its reconstruction. There will be international funding, security guarantees will be provided. Archaeological disputes, which for centuries have impeded progress, will be resolved. Even religious objections will be overcome. Obstacles that have hindered the Jewish dream for nearly 2 millennia will disappear in one fell swoop through a diplomatic agreement. But what makes this reconstruction so significant is the deception it carries. The temple will not only be the restoration of Jewish worship, it will also be interpreted by many Christians as a fulfillment of prophecy, as a sign that God is blessing the peace process. People who should be most vigilant about the Antichrist's agenda will see this act as confirmation of supposed divine approval. They will support the alliance because they believe they are collaborating with God's plan. What they don't realize is that their own theological understanding will be manipulated to support the system that will ultimately turn against them. The rebuilt temple will in effect become the throne room of the false deity of the Antichrist. And that brings us to the fourth event. Fourth, supernatural signs and wonders will confirm the deception. When the Antichrist makes the pact, it won't just be a political agreement upheld by human leaders. It will be accompanied by supernatural manifestations that will convince even the most skeptical that something divine is happening. The deception will be so sophisticated that even biblically literate Christians could be confused. The Antichrist will not only claim divine authority, but will demonstrate powers that seem to come from heaven itself. The Bible had already warned in 2 Thessalonians 2:9, "The coming of that lawless one is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders." Note, these are not cheap counterfeits. They are called lying wonders because they are real in their manifestation, but their source is not God, but Satan. Miracles will happen, but they will be of deceptive origin. Imagine the impact of this at the moment the agreement is signed. Suddenly, healings could occur in diplomatic meetings. The climate could change to favor harvests. The global economy could prosper beyond any logical explanation. Everything would give the impression that heaven is approving the pact. And this supernatural authentication leads us to the fifth event. Fifth, global worship systems begin to unify. This will be the most radical point of spiritual change in human history. The book of Revelation 13:8 describes it this way, "And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, every one whose name is not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world." Note, it's not the majority, it's not many, but all who do not belong to Christ. Religious unification will come at a terrible price. The abandonment of the exclusivity of truth. Everything will be leveled, mixed, standardized. Global worship of the Antichrist will emerge disguised as peace, but it will bring the greatest spiritual slavery in history. And that brings us to the last event. Sixth, the point of no return is reached. When the Antichrist's covenant is confirmed, when the temple is rebuilt, when supernatural signs are occurring and global worship begins to coalesce, a threshold will be crossed. It will be the point of no return. Until this moment, humanity will still have lived under the opportunity of choice. There will be resistance, there will be doubt, there will be those who try to remain faithful to Christ. But from this consolidated covenant, the world will plunge into an irreversible prophetic path. This is the moment when Jesus' words in Matthew 24 gain maximum force. "For then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. The pact that seemed to bring peace will reveal its true face, preparation for the darkest spiritual tyranny in history. The rebuilt temple will become the throne of a false god. The multitudes, enchanted by miracles, will not realize they are being entangled in a web of deception. Religions seeking unity will surrender their essence. The freedom to worship the true God will be suppressed. It will be a path of no return, for the system established by the Antichrist will not allow for compromise. Those who do not submit will be persecuted. Those who do not worship will be excluded. Those who resist will be branded as enemies. And yet this very scenario will fulfill exactly what Scripture has always foretold, that the man of lawlessness would come, that he would deceive the nations, and that his ascension would be the prelude to Christ's glorious return. This point of no return is not just political or religious, it is spiritual. All humanity, for the most part, will have made its choice, and the separation between those who belong to the Lamb and those who follow the beast will become visible. Thus the covenant not only marks the beginning of a new phase in world history, but also inaugurates the time when the words of the prophets, from Daniel to Revelation, will find literal fulfillment before everyone's eyes.